Hello guys, this is going to be the start of the New Holland W190 Loader build, and my plan today is to try and figure out how I'm going to connect these large Joskin wheels to these Siku motors here. Well, the first thing I'm going to need to do is cut this axle here so that I can get my Joskin wheels off first. Then we'll have to figure out how to get the wheels off the model itself. Okay, so there's our wheels freed up off the axles. So next thing to do, try and get these ones off the model, and that is probably going to be a little bit more challenging. Like most of these models, the wheels are press fit, but the tyres, they just pull straight off. There's not much in them. So what I'm thinking is, maybe if I get the tyres off, I can then find some way to just pry the wheel hubs off, because at the minute I've tried just pulling them apart, that's not working. So I'm not terribly bothered if I damage the wheel hubs. I don't particularly like these wheels. The way that they don't hold on to the back of the wheel rim makes them kind of bulge out on the inside. Not very good, but I might find some use for them later on. But what I'm going to try and do is put something in between the two wheels and try and lever them apart. They were held on there pretty well. It was a little bit tricky to get them off, but the first thing you need to do is get rid of the tyres, because with the tyres in the way you can't get your fingers in properly behind the wheel hubs to pull them apart. The second thing I did was kind of twist them in opposite directions, which kind of loosened them up a little bit. You can see they've got this kind of ridged piece, so that once you push it in, it kind of nearly tightens pulling it out. But once you loosen it up a bit, it seemed to come a little bit easier. But then you really have to pull them very hard apart to get them to come apart. It's not too easy. So that's what the finished model should look like. I think those tyres look a lot better. I'll just get the camera down here a bit. I think that looks a lot better than it did with the original wheels. The Joskin wheels just that little bit wider makes the model just look a little bit better. And of course the wider tyre and the softer rubber should give us much more grip for the loader, which is pretty important. Now the next thing I need to figure out is how I'm going to connect them to these Siku motors. So this separation between the wheels seems to be pretty ideal. At the back here we've loads of space around everywhere, so it's not too critical. But at the front here, the wheels are just snugly in behind each side of this section and fit in under the wheel wells pretty ideally. So I'll try and keep this this separation between the two wheels. So if we take the wheels off, we can measure the distance here, and that's about 42 millimeters. That's roughly 42 millimeters. So 42 millimeters between this part of each model. So just where it sits there, and that should be pretty ideal. 42 mil on our motor. There's about 42 mil. So if you see, that's pretty far in on our motor there, so that shouldn't be a problem at all. We should be able to mount up to this without much difficulty. So it looks like the diameter of this axle for these Joskin trailers is maybe 2.5 mil, something like that. So need to widen that out a little bit to let the new Siku axles fit into the wheel hubs. This axle here, which came with the Joskin trailers, that is actually 3 millimeters. The one on the Siku motors is a bit wider than that. It's about 3.45. It's probably, realistically, it's a 3.5 millimeter diameter axle. So what I have to do is try and get this up to close to 3.5. Okay, well, I figured out how I'm going to mount the wheels on these axles. I happen to have a 3.5 millimeter drill bit, so I drilled out this wheel here, and then when I pushed it on, I'd also drilled this wheel out here as well. So when I push it on, it is a fairly tight fit, which made me think, well, let's not overcomplicate this. All we need now is to add a key into this some way, so that we know it's not going to fall off too easily. So if we add a key in, that should stop it from spinning. So what I did was I got a very small drill bit, I think it was probably about 0.5 millimeters, and I drilled two little holes in this part of the wheel here, around about halfway along this circular piece here. Drilled two holes close to each other, and got a lead from a bit that I'd cut off, say an LED or something like that, probably off a resistor actually. A very small little lead, because this is very tight on the hole that I'm after drilling here. On the 3.5 millimeter hole, this is a very tight fit. So I drilled the two little holes real close to each other and pushed that little piece of wire through and pushed it up so that they were tight to each other. And now I've pushed this one on again, and it was obviously a lot harder to push on this time because the wire is in the key now. But if you look, when I try to spin the wheel here, you can probably see that the tyre is spinning on the wheel hub. So obviously you can't get any stronger than that. If we're pushing too heavy a load, we're just going to spin the tyre on the wheel hub. The wheel isn't going to spin off the shaft or anything like that. Even when you just push the wheel onto the hub here, you can see it's spinning on the tyre is spinning on the wheel hub. So obviously if it's spinning on the wheel hub, then you know it's not going to spin on the axle too much. The press fit is probably good enough, but I just added a little bit of wire to catch the key just to make sure that it definitely didn't spin on the axle. So because that required such small modification to the wheel, I think I'll do that for all of the wheels and test it out on the model. If it works, then I'll stick with that, and if it breaks, then I can always come up with a different design later on that will work a little bit better. Well, that seems to be the wheels mounted to the motors without too much difficulty. Certainly a lot less than I was expecting to have. But like I said, there's no guarantee that this is actually going to work when we get the model together and when it's driving. So we might have to come back and modify these wheels later on to make them work. But for now, that seems to be pretty good. Okay, I'm going to leave it here for today because I'm pretty sure that mounting the motors is going to be a pretty big job and deserves a video of its own. So mounting the rear motor shouldn't be too difficult. I think we just need to cut a little slot out of that and put a sump guard type of a thing on to hold the motor in place. So that one shouldn't be too much trouble. The front motor might be a little bit more challenging because I'm going to have to think about where I'm going to mount the motors for the loading arm itself before I can really mount the front motor here, the front drive motor. My plan for the loader at the minute is to get some of these N20 motors that have a threaded bar on the output shaft here. So I think it's an M3 threaded bar you can get, and for this one particularly I think the N3 motor is going to be pretty ideal. It'll just sit there and it'll be able to move around this area here and just screw that. This part should be able to just screw in and out on the threaded bar, and I think that'll be really strong. But the one that's going to interfere with the motor down here, I'm not sure how I'm going to mount that yet. It is going to be a little bit more challenging. Maybe I'll be able to mount it in here somewhere that it will face up, and then I might have to mount this drive motor facing up as well. So I have to think about that before I can mount this front motor, so that'll be for another video. But the next video will be me mounting the motors for this model. If you like this video, make sure and hit the like button, and make sure and share it and all that sort of stuff. That helps a lot. If you have any questions, make sure and head over to the forum, and you can start a thread, or there's probably a thread already for this build, so you can just ask your questions there and I'll answer them when I can. So if you want to see me mounting the motors, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and you should be getting a notification when I update the next one of these videos. And that's pretty much everything, so thanks very much for watching.